this is, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction here, and then you'll find this becomes a very spontaneous kind of round-robin tag team adventure. So we're going to engage in what's called the long conversation, which is essentially picking a given topic and then going through a series of speakers. So for the next 90 minutes, myself and 8 additional people will come on and we'll have these small 10-minute interviews. So should be a lot of fun. There's no time for Q&A during this, but I mean, I would encourage you to come and talk to us afterwards, I guess, or maybe if there's some time at the end. But yeah, so without further ado, I'm Marty Edwards. Most of you know me, and I am joined here with Marcus Brandal.
Thank you. Yeah, Marcus, I worked with ABB, Airbus, VW, and now with Canvas Academy. And I have no clue what we're doing up here.
I don't know what we're doing either. So, and Dale wanted it to be very spontaneous. So there's no slides, there's no scripts,
Excellent.
There's no rehearsal. So the topic that we chose for this is a topic that Dale both loves and hates, right? It's this IT-OT. So are these systems converging, or is it better to have them converged? Is it better to have them separated? What tools do we use in the respective environments, and can you cross-pollinate between these? And when we chose the speakers, what I did is I tried to get a good mix-up of people that had asset owner experience, OEM vendor experience, government experience, so we got kind of a broad swath. So, Marcus, as part of the long conversation,
yeah.
You know, you've been in the CISO role on both sides, right? So
Yep.
You've seen the IT side of the house and the OT side of the house in large manufacturers like Airbus and VW. What's your perspective? I mean, so is it? Let's start sort of simple.
Yes, please.
Simple but complicated.
We can keep the tough questions for Tyler.
For Tyler
exactly.
and those guys. Is it better, in your opinion, to have a consolidated cybersecurity program that includes OT, IT, IoT, everything that's T, or
Yep.
do you need to have very specific and different people, process, governance, et cetera, for each one?
Yeah. So first of all, there's few words that get my blood pressure pumping, like the word convergence, because I think it sort of misses the point. And the other thing is, like, when people talk IT-OT convergence, they think technology.
Yes.
Right? And like you said, I had different roles, and for me, it's not, I mean, of course there's technology involved, but the bigger question has nothing to do with technology. So, you know, to your point, is it better to have, you know, IT, OT separate and all these kind of things? At the end of the day, it's around risk management, right? And if you have to go in and talk to your board, right, or your CEO, they don't care about what that box is, whether that's on the enterprise IT side or OT side. They want to know, how big is my risk, how big is my exposure, and what is it going to cost me to, you know, get the risk to a level that I can sleep well at night.
Yep. You've got this, you know, liability here with the risk. You know, how do I buy that down to a level that's acceptable for the company?
Exactly. And where I've, you know, seen companies fail is if, you know, the first guy comes in and is all passionate about securing enterprise IT and talks about all these threats and says, here's your risk level and here's how much money I need to fix all of this, right? And then 5 minutes later, the guy from OT comes in and says, oh, you know, here's the risk level and here's how much money I need to fix it. And 5 minutes later, the software developer comes in and talks about product security and here's the risk level and here's how much money I need to all fix this. Like, the board is going to look at these 3 guys or girls and say, what the hell?
Yeah, they should have had a separate meeting beforehand
exactly.
and consolidated
and you also don't want to end up in situations where you're competing, you know, for each other's budget, right? And again, I've seen this happen where it was almost seen like OT is trying to take away the money from IT to secure infrastructure.
Because IT has too much money anyway.
That is true. But you don't want to be in this situation. Like, I'll give you an example. When I started out at ABB, it was more, I mean, we called it cybersecurity. Today, you would call that product security. But it was around OT.
Yeah.
I was super fortunate, and you know, it's one of those things in hindsight you realize. The CISO at ABB at that time, right, he could have played this 2 ways. He could have said, wait a minute, there's another guy that has a, you know, big cybersecurity title that is even closer to the board than I am, so I'm going to do everything in my power to not give him anything, right? Let's build up walls, let's make sure that, you know, he didn't do that. He was like, you know what? We're both trying to reduce risks for our company that are digital risks that have to do with security, right? In different domains, so let's play together. And for me, that was a blessing, right? Because I had an ally. And so again, when we talk IT, OT convergence on a technical level, I always feel like you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you know, and from my perspective, the technology, like if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, it'd be much different. Because we didn't have bespoke OT aware cybersecurity solutions, right? But we do now. You can go and buy them from any one of the vendors in the vendor sort of pavilion area, right? You know, and I think that when I was at Tenable, I certainly saw a lot of potential crossover of the technology tools. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to use a properly configured and designed IT security solution in an OT environment. It just has to be aware of all of the, you know, the rules and protocols.
It's always been there, right?
So I guess what I'm leading towards is, you know, one of our chief product officers said it best one time. He said the only big competitor we have is Microsoft Excel. He said, because you're taking all of the data sets from these different cybersecurity solutions and exporting them, and then somebody's sitting there plunking them into Excel so that you can do a pivot table to get the report to hand to the CISO or to hand to the board. So do you believe, I believe, that if you can help consolidate, integrate those data sets and the subordinate tools, still recognizing you need specialty tools to do specialty things, I think that's a win-win, right?
Absolutely. I think you need to look at it from a point of who is the receiver of that data, right?
Yes.
If they're part of the OT environment, then you're going to focus on data that's very much specific and focused on OT, right? If you're talking to someone that's IT, you're going to use a different language and different data sets. But as you go up and these things start getting together,
they do,
right? You have to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to be successful.
So we've talked about the people primarily. We talked about the technology a little bit. How about the governance? So I mean, most IT organizations have been around for quite a while, and so we have, you know, essentially all of these policies and procedures within our companies that say this is how you shall do something.
Yes.
OT has always been more on the engineering side, and although there are some places that do an extremely good job of change control and change management, there's others that it seems like it's expert-based. So you have this one person that knows how to do something, and nothing's written down. It's in their head.
Call Bob.
Call Bob. So how do we transport, or are the governance procedures and policies that are in place, do they impact whether this is going to succeed or not?
Yeah, I think you have to use the best of both worlds, right? And that's, again, one of the reasons why I don't like convergence, because it sounds like you sort of meet in the middle and you accept the worst of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the case. There's certain things that IT does really, really well and has done really, really well, and you need to figure out how you can use that to the best ability in the OT environment. Again, like you said, you have to pay attention to the differences.
And vice versa, you know.
Absolutely.
I remember when we first started putting in the pulp mill that I was in, we started mixing kind of the IT and the control system people together. We always learned from each other. It's like, oh, wow, what's that tool that you use to do this? I want to use that. And then they would go, oh, well, you're using this other thing over here that looks really neat.
I would assume, like in your role at ICS CERT, right, when you went in to do instant response, I'm sure you didn't go in and say, let's first draw up a map, what is IT, what is OT?
Well, the first thing we did is asked for a network diagram that they pulled one out of the drawer that was 35 years old and had no, But I'm sure we had to build the network diagram.
You used whatever you had at your disposal that was best for whatever. And I would doubt, we were like, oh no, we're not using IT tools because we're OT here, or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I think the time, in my opinion anyway, the time has come where this has to be much more collaborative. We're not fighting for the same jobs. We're hopefully not fighting for the same budget, which was your opening point kind of thing.
We shouldn't be.
You know, so when I go in and do executive level consulting now, the majority of the discussion is, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, what risks do you believe you have, or bringing in some people to help you, educate you on where those risks are. And it's not about which black box with blinky blue lights you're going to buy. right? It's not about technology. It's about what people are you going to have, what organizational structure are you going to have, and how are you going to empower them with policy and governance to get their job done.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
the other thing, I mean, you can't predict the future, right? Things are going to change. You never know what's going to be.
Well, and you need a flexible and resilient organization to be able to address that. And I think that if you have these people sitting in totally separate buildings or cities and they never have had a coffee or a beer with each other, when that incident happens and you're trying to do that triage and recovery, that's not the best time to introduce these people to each other.
No, totally not. And I think incidents is a great sort of measuring stick, right? I mean, you don't want to find out at an incident, but at least you can play through and figure out if everything goes bad, right?
That's right.
Can the teams work together? And if the answer is no, then probably should have thought about it before.
Okay, the first 10 minutes is up. We're going to do the tag team, and I'm going to go off, and best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Eric. I'm coming from Sweden, Stockholm, in Scandinavia, Europe.
I think so. I know we shouldn't do, but I have to say one thing as Europeans. I'm Swiss, he's from Sweden. That's not the same.
Very important. Yeah.
It's the only thing I wanted to say today, so thank you. So, Eric, Marty and I talked about already a little bit, so I wanted to continue the discussion where Marty and I left off around incidents and also sort of get your view. I've been involved in a lot of incidents, for better or worse, and one of the things that's common thread across all, it was never just an OT incident or just an IT incident, right? The majority of incidents, they start out somewhere, right? And they make their way through the network, all different areas, and end up in OT and affect everything, right? One, is that something that you would share? And then two, if we accept that as sort of a reality, what does that mean for us?
Well, I completely agree that we often have a very complex integration and a lot of ways in, so we are exposed in a way. So if someone gets in all the way down to our critical PLCs and stuff like that are vulnerable because they have a long lifetime and haven't been upgraded, and we don't have the resources, especially if you're a small utility with one guy that actually doing operation and also trying to make the security. We have those incidents because of lack of communication, lack of understanding between IT and OT. We have a gap there, but also, like you said in your conversation about the management gap between how do we prioritize our resources. Everyone needs more resources, and the complexity is increasing.
Absolutely. No, I agree to that. One of the things this is like, it's a while back, but I'm sure it still happens, talking to the CISO, right, and asking him around. So one of the things we see right now, or I see when I talk to different people, is that more and more CISOs, CIOs are becoming responsible also for security of the OT environments, right? And they're struggling because they don't have a clue around what a PLC is. But so I was talking to this one CISO a while ago. So this is really, 5-10 years ago. Sort of started asking him about, how do you deal with OT? So his response was, well, we firewall it off. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, that's for us a non-managed, evil network, so we firewall it off. And I'm like, well, where are you making your money, right? Is that something that you see as well, that there's still like this big misunderstanding and not a collaboration?
God, there are so many
I think
stories about this. Stories from seeing the OT department or OT guys trying to protect them from IT by just making an attachment that this is an industrial PC, so you shouldn't manage this. But also that the threat can be from the IT department and the office network. So sometimes you see the OT guys putting their firewalls towards the IT because they are the evil ones. So
exactly.
So
yeah. So were you an engineer first and then get into OT security? Or were you from
Yeah.
IT, made your way over?
I'm an electrical engineer from the beginning, and then accidentally, as often, I ended up in cybersecurity. I've been working in the nuclear field with
Yeah.
safety critical systems. And then I started to realize, why don't we have this same type of redundancy, diversity, like we have in safety critical systems in the IT world, in the OT world. And then we just ended up having this kind of conversation towards the threats that could be towards critical systems. And that's why I ended up in
So
this
who
area.
makes a better OT security engineer? Someone that comes from OT and learns cybersecurity, or someone that comes from IT security and learns OT?
Yeah.
You have a chance to piss off half the room right
Yeah,
now, so go ahead.
probably. Exactly. That's a tricky question, because I think it's also depending on what kind of process you have, how complicated it is. For instance, do a lot of trainings for electrical utilities. I have both IT and OT people there, both so they can learn each other, but
Yeah,
also
exactly.
understand the process, because the equipment are more IT now. Even the smarter devices we have more complicated interactions and communication. So we need to have more IT awareness, and the process engineer need to know the networks, how it's really communicated. So in that sense, they need to have more IT knowledge, but the IT people, if you're very good in networking and communication, you can also learn more about the process. For instance, when I started to do this, I worked I did an assessment of a big drinking water plant. I worked at the plant just to learn about the process, not just see what the weaknesses are, because that Nessus scan that many do, they ended up having a report of 13 pages, but missing the most critical thing is it's that back, and it's not really highlighted. So you have to understand.
You said something that I want to just quickly pick up on, because I fully agree, right? Definitely we see more and more quote-unquote IT, again, whatever that definition is, coming over to OT, which also means you have to work across the aisle. And one of the things, cross-functional teams, right? That's one of the things I keep talking about. And it's not just technology, right? Cross-functional teams should include procurement, should include legal, should include communications, all those kind of things. When you buy, from an IT vendor, make sure that they understand OT, vice versa. So I think one of the ways of being successful with all these challenges is not trying to do it by yourself, but like really cross-functional teams, right? And learning from each other, because that's the only way to go. I think, because you mentioned the word complexity, right? Yeah. These systems are definitely getting more complex, and thinking that you can have one or two cyber ninjas that can cover everything, no way.
No.
Right? So you need to be able to bring people together.
Exactly. And also the complexity is increasing because of the new possibilities we have with the industrial Internet of Things, more devices, more temperature sensors. Things that we know that IoT devices are not secure, but we use them more and more and integrate them in the functionality. That's also getting something that we're getting dependent on them. Absolutely. And that's a tricky part.
Yeah. And one of the things for me that's important, again, where I see sometimes people struggle, both security and technology. I mean, you don't do security for technology's sake, right? You should do it for business sake. So the same thing when you're trying to introduce new IT, you shouldn't be doing it because it's, cool or it's a shiny box. You should do it because there's like a business need.
Yeah.
I used to say, we used to have what we called golf course distractions. What we meant by that is our CEO went golfing with the CEO of a tech company, and he would come back and say, oh, I just met such and such, and they have a great technology. Can you, work together to figure out how we can use this? And I used to hate that with a passion, because why? What's the business case? What are you trying to achieve? Just because you had 18 holes with that guy and you had a few drinks doesn't mean that we're now compatible. And sometimes I think in these discussions around introducing IT and IT-OT convergence, we get lost in, we do it for technology or security, and I think we should look at the business case.
And another thought about that is also that we are why we are here still talking about this is also that because, I mean, we met in 2008, I think,
Yes,
in
sometime.
Loyola on a process security conference, but
Yeah.
you were at ABB, and still we have this kind of discussion, and I think it's also education, like we said, the gap, and even the business case. We are not really good in explaining the risks and the consequences in a business sense for the management level, how we prioritize.
You know what, you're absolutely right, because what I'm just thinking of is, as well, we keep talking about technology, and the technology changes. So like way back when it was smart grid, and we're talked about these kind of things, and then the next technology came in, and we're talking about how do we integrate that technology, and now it's cloud and AI, so we're talking about all of these things, but they're all the same at the end of the day, right? They're different technologies that we're trying to integrate. So we need to take a big step back and say, how do we create an ecosystem where not every time a new technology comes up, we restart the discussions from square one, but we have a robust sort of environment.
Yeah.
I'm Johnny Christmas. I'm the Global Head of Offensive Security for Kraft Heinz. For those unfamiliar with offensive security, that means Kraft Heinz pays me a lot of money to commit crimes against the company, and it's as cool as it sounds.
Yeah, and
Thanks for having me on your show.
So glad to be here. But you have been doing a lot of offensive, but also defensive
Yes, absolutely.
security for the last 10 years. And so, what is your feeling of the challenges? Like we talked about, the technology have moved on, and the thing that we have down there in PLCs. How is that? How do you think we should protect things? Where is the problem?
So one of the biggest gaps I see when people are performing risk assessment, not just inside of OT, but in any environment, is they're not understanding the threats. They're not taking into consideration the threats. Most organizations I see, and the conversations I have, are around a number of vulnerabilities. And they're looking at vulnerabilities from the scanners, vulnerabilities from reports based on hardware and firmware running inside their environments, and saying, here's our risk based on the vulnerabilities. They're not actually taking a look at the threats out there against those vulnerabilities. And so we're seeing a lot of effort being put into addressing vulnerabilities that are at a much lower level of risk than some of the other ones. And to give an example, we talk a lot about patching the PLCs. Let's talk about layer 0, layer 1 stuff, right? We got firmware version 3 running on this PLC, and it's susceptible to this critical vulnerability. And perhaps the latest firmware I'm able to put on that piece of hardware is version 6. And we don't realize that version 6 is also susceptible to 2 high-level vulnerabilities. And so like this old attitude that is still existence even in IT of patch your stuff doesn't really always apply. And it's crazy that we hear, like, everybody agrees with that. Everybody knows, well, you can't always patch. There's always interesting situations where patching isn't the best option. And yet we're still seeing so much effort being put into patching these things. When the reality of what the threats look like to these environments is they're still the vast majority of threats against the OT environments are still attacking the IT equipment. And so many of the threats are thwarted by old solutions. Like, these are solved problems that we're still arguing with in the OT space here. The number one thing, let's see, I don't want to play favorites, but I'll give you the top two. The top two things that I absolutely despise seeing as a criminal, as somebody who's trying to take down infrastructure, the two things that make me stop, that make me give up and go somewhere else are MFA on the logins, multi-factor authentication, and network segmentation. Network segmentation is devastatingly effective. We should be focusing on that wherever possible instead of fiddling around, messing with getting the right firmware versions on our PLCs when half of them are too old to get the latest firmware version anyway, and you still haven't even done proper network segmentation yet. Take the money, take the time, put all that effort into network segmentation, because if I can't talk to the system, whatever the system is it a PLC, is it an EWS? If I can't talk to it, I can't attack it. I can't do anything regardless of how vulnerable that system is, regardless if it's an NT4 system sitting in your network. If I can't communicate with it as an attacker, it's safe. Like you're safe. Network segmentation is absolutely like the biggest thing I push. If you haven't done the low-hanging fruit, stop picking around and worrying about the weeds.
You mentioned MFA. I mean, how is that? Sometimes when it's in the IT department and stuff like that, it should be always have that. But still you have like management there. This is a project. We don't have time for this now. It's ineffective. And until they happen for ransomware and stuff like that, of course. But going into OT devices, it's not that common. And also MFA, the weakness is if you don't log out, so you still are logged into the equipment and stuff like that. That's something that you probably use a lot when you're offensive.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
This is actually an attitude I've been hearing a lot at the conference so far. We all seem to be trying to make perfection be the enemy of good. You will never be perfect, right? Anyone here is an asset owner knows it's impossible. Anyone here who's just worked in IT knows you will never have a flawless environment. So stop striving for perfection. Stop getting down into the weeds and trying to make every project have a definition of done that looks like perfection. You can't incorporate MFA into every possible login in your environment. I mean, how many things do you have in your environment that were invented, that were created before MFA was invented? There are ways around that, your jump hosts or whatever you want to call them, things like that. You can do your network segmentation and then have MFA and SSO on the system that allows that login to pass through. There's things that could be engineered to implement MFA everywhere. Go ahead.
Still, segmentation is also a kind of challenge for many.
Sure.
And if you're doing an architecture and you suddenly see changes in the environment, or shadow IT because of someone needed it, communication.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? Have you seen that?
Absolutely. Shadow IT is a top concern, one of the most difficult things to solve because it's the you don't know what you don't know problem. It's the same problem as you don't know, everybody gives talks here about, hey, you've got all these devices on the internet. Why are your control systems, why is your HMI on the internet? How do you know which of your devices are internet facing if they're not using your public IP block? Assigned to that HMI. If you had a vendor set it up, and sometimes I've seen vendors come in and they'll bring on outside ISPs just to get this thing on the internet, and the plant manager doesn't understand that this is a problem. But to go kind of veering away from your question, the shadow IT is what is going to happen if you do not listen to the people who are using the systems and engineer a proper solution around how they need to work and how they need to operate. If you are just blasting security across and doing best practices because that's what the book says to do and ignoring the context of the situation, the context of where you're applying the security, you will get shadow IT. And you're not allowed to get upset that shadow IT is there because it's your fault. You caused the shadow IT to crop up. It is an inevitability when you prevent the business from being able to generate revenue, when you prevent the business from being able to do its job. Security should get in the way a little bit. It should be a minor annoyance. Yep. And really, I remember back when MFA was first coming out and everybody was up in arms about, oh, this adds an extra step. Now it takes me almost an entire month to log into to my email or whatever. Everybody thought MFA was the most disgusting, horrible thing information security has ever come up with. And now, every single thing we use in our lives is MFA, right? It started with our bank accounts and it spidered out from there. Now MFA is we're all used to it. Yeah. But you have to work with the people that you are getting in the way of. Network segmentation also, I throw that down like it's an easy thing. Just segment your networks. Why didn't you guys do this yet? I've been a part of multi-year network resegmentation projects. It is major. It can be a huge thing depending on the environment.
So it's our fault in a sense that we make it hard for if we don't listen to the people running the plant and what their needs are. But you also see that there can be also a lack of knowledge or education because they don't know what they the exposure they
that's
have.
absolutely part of working with the people, is making sure they understand why this is being put in. I think I come across this problem so much. This is maybe security's most critical flaw, is we don't educate on why. We say, this is what we're doing, this is how you have to use it now. And then everyone goes, I don't get this. Why? The old way worked fine. Why are we doing? And then nobody answers the why.
Actually, I think what you should do is more trainings. I mean, if you train things, if you try to highlight what its consequences are, they understand why. Because if they just told that you should do this, you forget it. It's not something that you feel in what the consequences are.
And with any project, let's see, what are the first two things that get cut from any project when we're over time and over budget? Documentation and training. They're the first things that get thrown right out the window. And depending on the context, training can even be more critical than the documentation. We're just totally on our heads with all that.
Cool.
All right.
So, hello everyone. My name is Roya Gordon, and I am the Deputy CISO of NG North America. This is a very special S4 for me because it's my first time here as an asset owner. I've been here for a vendor, consulting. I've been in my role for 4 months now, so pretty new, but still I have a bit of an interesting perspective now being on the asset owner side when it comes to this topic in particular. So. Let's get into the conversation.
Great. I too find myself at being an asset owner for the first time. I have experience, I have an OT background, I have an embedded systems background, but this is the first time I've worked internally at an organization that's major OT offerings. We've got over 70 plants globally, and it is vastly overwhelming. We were just talking about the issues of network segmentation, MFA, but in implementing what you and I would probably consider very basic, minimal security controls that take care of a huge part of the security problems in these environments. Following the 80-20 rule, do you find? Are you finding a similar situation on your side? I know you may not have had a ton of time to completely survey the landscape of what you guys are dealing with.
So I will say this. The IT versus OT conversation, I thought we beat the dead horse already. Until, I really thought we were done with it. But it is alive and well because my second week in my role, it was also Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I was caught off guard. They were like, you're the new Deputy CISO, give a presentation to the entire company. And the one presentation I had in my back pocket, slides ready and everything, was IT versus OT. And I did it, I posted it on LinkedIn. I stirred up a lot of emotions because people were upset. Like, we shouldn't be saying IT versus OT, it's IT and OT, it's convergence, they should be together. But every organization is very different. And I realized that I'm presenting to different audiences. I'm telling, HR and finance and payroll and procurement and legal, like, they know what IT security is, but OT security is very different for plant owners and operators and the engineering team and the SCADA team. So I've had them actually come up to me and thank them because they're out at the sites. They're not always visible, and they're like, finally, you're telling everyone what we do and why it's important. And also I've been in positions where I'm currently doing IT DRP for finance's BCP, and they keep mentioning IT, OT, cybersecurity. So I spoke to the PM after the call. I'm like, why do you keep saying OT? We're focusing on finance applications. And he was like, yeah, but you do IT and OT security. So I was just grouping it together. So I had to explain to him, like, OT is for the sites, IT is for what we're focusing on for finance. And just you realize that not everyone knows the difference. We're in our OT security bubble here. We all know it. But when you're in industry and you're just talking to all these people that are doing their everyday stuff, they have no idea what OT security is. So I see the importance of explaining both and sharing that they are very different. And we can get into the details of it because I also learned that IT and OT, it's not 2 different teams. There's like 6 different teams. and I interface with them all. You know, there's the IT infrastructure team, the OT infrastructure team, the engineering team, the SCADA team, and then there's the security team that does the IT and the OT security. And it depends on the size of your organization, but at a large organization, there's going to be several different teams that have to work together. So if you want to get something done, 6 different people from all those different teams coming together to make decisions. So that's the current reality of things.
It's sounding like your IT, OT security team is managing, monitoring, alerting in both environments. Are you considering breaking that off and further having just your OT security team and just your IT?
It has to be separate. I think it can be the same when it comes to strategy, you know, because you can't just do security for IT and not consider it for OT. But when I'm speaking with my OT security manager, my IT security manager, we're having different conversations. Like, it's not the same. There's different projects, there's different initiatives, there's different tools. So there's no way that they can just do the same thing. I just don't see it that way. And before, again, just, you know, being on the vendor side when you're focused on solving 1 or 2 problems, right? But now I'm focused on, yeah, OT security is one thing, but there's so many other security issues that I have to focus on that you can't just have one team doing it all. They have to have their very specialized focus. And especially for OT security when you're dealing with different sites, right? Solar and wind, and there's power plants and battery storage. Like, that OT team has to focus on that, and your IT security team focusing on the IT stuff.
You had mentioned this mentioning of the phrase IT/OT cybersecurity, and you're with the IT/OT cybersecurity team.
Oh, yeah.
This sounds to me like before you came in, this might have been a scenario where they said, okay, IT and OT have converged now. This part of the convergence is that we're all on the same team and we're all the same player. Do you think that's what happened there?
No, it was always separate. It was always separate, because again, there's the OT infrastructure team. They're the ones configuring the industrial control systems at the plants. They're not the ones maintaining it, operating it. They're not the ones using SCADA to monitor it. They're not the ones securing it. That's one team that's doing that one thing. The IT security team, they're providing that service. They're doing the connectivity. They do that and then they're out. That's another separate thing. The plant owners and operators, they're doing that. They're not doing the maintenance. They're not doing the SCADA, you know, and then security, I would say our team is kind of like an extension from internal audit. We're gonna make sure that we're, you know, meeting controls, we're doing remediation, doing the pen testing, but I didn't look at it like this before, but now just kind of being boots on ground, it just makes sense for it to all be separate. Working together, yes, but they just have to be separate. What are your thoughts? Do you think it should be so? Because you're in consulting and you're talking to a whole bunch of different asset owners, and you know everyone's org differently.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the more that I talk to more and more asset owners in every vertical, you can't treat everything with this homogeneous policy, this homogeneous program. You can't do as I was suggesting, IT and OT have all converged now and we're all on the same plane. You still have to segregate that network because different departments have different needs. They have different things they need to get done in different ways. You will always have the safety problem that IT will never have to deal with. Yeah. You can't just have any kind of blanket coverage for everything. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Let's do this. Show of hands, how many first-time asset owners in the audience? It's okay, it's fine. Not a ton. Cool. As a first-time asset owner, like what resources did you use for your first 100 days, we'll call it, of like how did you onboard yourself? Where did you scratch together information to hit the ground running in this nightmare field?
That is a very interesting question. Onboarding myself. I came up with my 60, 90-day plan because I knew, it's like you don't know what you need to know, but I just knew that I needed the foundation to be able to build upon to learn other things. So ENGIE it's a large company, if y'all don't know, renewable energy, headquartered in Paris. More of an electricity provider in Europe, but here in North America, we have different, solar, wind sites, battery storage. We just purchased a battery storage company, and we also power a lot of universities and manufacturing facilities, so we have a couple power plants. I needed to understand that.
Yeah.
What are our different business units? Internal audit, right? I mean, there's auditing, there's frameworks, there's external auditors, all of that. But our internal auditing framework and the cadence and what they're looking for, like what that looks like. I need to get up to speed with that. Then figuring out, well, what's the infrastructure at these different sites? And they're very different because, renewables, they're more cookie cutter versus the power plants where they're each different sites. That was the foundation. I had to set up meetings with like every single owner of these things and have like 2-hour calls with them to get up to speed. Because again, in my previous roles, when I was consulting, when I was a vendor, when I was an independent contributor, I spoke to a lot of asset owners, but none of them are set up the way that we're set up. So it's all very different.
Yeah.
And 4 months in, still learning, still growing, but yeah, having a lot of fun.
The learning and growing can't stop ever.
It won't stop.
Yeah, the train's always coming up behind you. And that's very interesting. I had done very similar things. You meet with every owner of every single environment within that company. And I'm your deputy CISO. I do offensive security, drastically different jobs.
Yeah.
And yet, the onboarding is still the same. I have to go talk to the people who are on the ground doing the things to understand the intricate natures of each of their environments to determine what's the best course of action.
Yeah, I had to visit a plant because I'm like, I want to see how we do our audits. I had my hard hat on, I'm walking around and yeah. But
fantastic.
I feel like when you started, you were talking about the fact that we're having this conversation again, and it feels like perpetual deja vu. Something tells me that Dale and Marty did this to me on purpose, because it was 2011. I have PTSD from this, by the way. 2011 at a SANS conference, I was sitting on a stage, and there's 2 consultants next to me, which I am now, by the way, and they're having this debate, and I had this really sullen, frustrated look on my face. And I just kept saying, it's just tea, stop it, it's just tea. And somebody, I think Clint, if he's around here, took a picture of me with this really evil looking face, posted it on Twitter, and put Tyler Williams, head of security at Shell, says it's just tea, and the comments went crazy. And he probably didn't realize that at Shell, we had a pretty big social media department. And they were really upset with a non-Shell approved facial expression. So it just feels, again, it's 10 minutes is a lot of time to get myself into trouble again, so I'll try to behave.
I was nervous too, because I'm new to this company, I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers. I'm used to kind of saying whatever I want, and now I'm like, okay, big NG, can I say this, can I say that? I don't want to reveal too much about the organization, so I've kind of been wrestling with that.
Good luck with that. Anyway, I'm Tyler, by the way. I currently am the head of cybersecurity across Canada for OT and what we call industrials and energy. Spent the last 10 years, as you could probably tell by my first statement, heading up cyber globally for a relatively large energy company. So wore a couple of different hats. Now I'm a consultant and have to play a different role sometimes.
Yeah, so newbie asset owner and oldie asset owner.
Lots of scar tissue, Roya. It's going to be a challenge to fight the old version of yourself. And I think Johnny was saying just the shiny objects that everybody's trying to get you to do, which as a practitioner, you probably think, great, let's do this. And then the reality hits you of not just cost, but just the complexity of doing things at scale. It's non-trivial, but you'll do it.
Yeah, so I have a question for you. So I kind of talked about all the different teams. It's not just IT versus OT and the IT and OT teams, but all the different teams that kind of make up what we do for OT security. Did you see the same thing when you were at Shell, or I guess where you're at now?
Yeah. I think that's independent of the concept of IT OT. Just at a large energy company, and a large company to begin with, you've got different stakeholders, different incentives. I think you're finding there's internal teams that have to be aligned, but there's also OEMs and even consultants. They all kind of have to sing from the same song sheet. So I think stakeholder management is important, but I also go back to like the principle, like why are you, in order to get stakeholder management, you all have to come to some alignment on what are we doing here and why are we doing it. And I've always oscillated between this concept of it's just tea, like stop it, the debate's useless. And maybe it is not that useless because everybody has their own incentives, and let's work within that and reward everybody to work together to make some things happen. So part of me wants to start with like, okay, what is the point of convergence? Like, even as Marcus was saying, like, he hates the term, and so do I, but I don't understand what is the business case and who is this coming from? Like, who is asking us to converge? Is it IT because they want to reduce technical debt, or they want to have a cost conversation, or they think they could do things better? Is it OT because they want to optimize operations and do more remote asset management? Is it consultants because they want a digital transformation program? I still don't know like where the economics are for what this OT IT convergence is. And if someone has an answer, I'm curious to find out who's driving this.
Yeah, I agree. I think someone just put it out there and they have us talking about it, but no one really wants it. That's what I'm seeing.
Now that I'm a consultant, I used to say it's the consultants that did it, but now that I'm a consultant, we're wise when it comes to.
But as far as bringing the awareness, and I know someone said it before me, is, that's something I'm seeing that is very important now, because, there's one thing to check a box for compliance, so going to the plants and saying, hey, you need to remediate this or you're not going to be compliant, but explaining to them why it matters, why they need this. A lot of them don't know of the threat actors that are targeting their environments, or the malware, the OT-specific malware and ransomware. So they get a little frustrated with security. So this year my plan is to, I call it like a Deputy CISO world tour, but just to go around to all the different sites, meet the stakeholders and really explain to them, like, this is why you're doing this is why it's important. There are some complexities in that. NG, we have a couple of concession agreements where we've adopted power plants and adopted unionized workers that don't have cybersecurity in their contracts, so forcing them to take cyber seriously when that's not anything that they were ever doing. And unions protect workers. There's complexities there, but I'm hoping that me just kind of explaining to them the importance, the why, this bad thing could happen, your life could be at risk if you don't implement these controls, that could make them kind of warm up to it and take it on as a responsibility. But I get it. I get the gripe of, I'm not a cyber person, I'm an engineer. I don't, I have other issues I have to deal with. Why do I also have to do cyber?
Do you think it would be so if we went back and said it's just T, and you said, look, we can do flat networks, TSN, software defined, whatever you want to call it, and I think the NVIDIA guy was talking this morning about putting compute and Ubuntu at the edge. If we just all of a sudden decided we're all going to, as a community, let's just go there. Let's just go all the way to the edge and forget about the nonsense of stakeholder complexities, OEM entrenchment, governance, definitions, terminologies, and just let's all move towards a more converged world. Do you think that we could avoid coming back here in 10 years and still having this conversation? I feel like there's something in me is like, let's just go. Like, yes, there's going to be risks. Yes, there's going to be complexities. There's going to be scar tissue. And I can give you a quick example. So what we did at my previous life, we did have a common definition when we were in this convergence journey, and it was not called convergence, it was just digital transformation in our engineering environment. And we just decided to do it layer by layer. And we had fights for years that engineering didn't want IT in this particular area, but this business unit, they were willing to adopt that. So we had a big organization that we could do things at scale. So we just said, we're going to take over, maybe not the best term, but anything at L3 and above, DMZ, 3.5, doesn't matter, it's now going into IT's domain. Yell all you want, scream all you want, but let's do it, and let's figure out, okay, so what applications need to go down, what applications need to go up, how do we put ITSM in place for L3? Yes, we're in their environment now. Honeywell, Siemens, and Schneider, let's all get on board. It felt like that was the right move. Somebody at the business level said, we need this for remote operations, unmanned facilities, all the business benefits, stop the debate, let's move in, and we just went layer by layer. And after a couple of years, this debate was gone, and you've got more effective obsolescence planning, management of data, and then security was kind of, our team got involved as hey, bolt us in.
Yeah.
Don't be the purpose, don't use convergence to manage risk better, but be the benefit and enabler of the business outcomes. And again, I think most end users will kind of probably benefit from an approach like that. Like, let's just go follow an encroachment and let everybody debate for a little bit, and then let's figure out how to optimize once we get there, versus not getting off the starting line.
I think people like the debate.
Maybe,
I think that's what makes their job fun, that wakes them up in the morning, because I'm telling you, I mean, I witness it, I'm on the calls, I kind of see the back and forths, and at the end of the day, I think, because all the different teams, they're reporting to different VPs and they all have different objectives, so my
Different
cyber
budgets.
objectives and initiatives aren't going to be the engineers or IT infrastructure and all those other teams. So I'm kind of with them like fighting so I can, meet my KPIs the way that they are.
Yeah.
And maybe we're just coming together for this one thing, but I think it's serving a broader purpose for each of us that don't really align at the higher strategic level. Shouldn't be that way, but I think it's a part of it. The fight is a part of the job.
Well, maybe as you take on this new role, maybe try something bold and say, like, this level of convergence is gonna be defined like this. We're going this direction. I mean, you'll make a mark. It might be a scar here and there, but I think, yeah, even just with the audience here, every time I come to these events, we all have kind of similar opinions on things. Maybe some, as you say, debates are enjoyable. But if we just said, like, why not let IT get L3? Let's design a new network architecture. Let's standardize it with the working groups and the consortiums, and we're going to say IT's down to L3, and let's operationalize that together as a community and see if that works. Maybe even from there we'll go down deeper, but then you'll hit up the OEM convergence.
I'll try it and let you know how it goes. Hopefully I still have my job.
Well, as a consultant, I can help you with that.
I'm like, there's bigger NG I got to answer to here.
That's true. Yeah, I remember those days. I remember
the
those days.
headquarters. But I do want to say one other thing that I never thought about before, but when I posted this on my LinkedIn, I don't know why people were so against it, but I was pretty much saying that you need to separate cybersecurity training. There needs to be the regular IT cyber training like spear phishing, business email compromise, but there needs to be OT-specific cybersecurity training for the sites. And I don't know why that upset people, but I'm just so happy to know that that's what we're doing and we're focusing on. Because the plant owners and operators, they need to know not click on spear phishing emails, but they need to know what to do if like their SCADA is compromised, or how to detect threats to their specific environments, what to do. And I'm just happy I went to the training roundup. I got to connect with a couple of good companies to kind of help us build out that capability for our sites. So
yeah, it certainly starts there, for sure. All right, so without my EY hat on, I like to say two operators, two asset owners here, but I guess I can't really say that. But I mean, I know you, lots of us know you, but maybe there's some new folks in the room.
Yeah, I'll throw my name out. Like Casey Carnes. So I've spent my career in public power, mainly on the asset owner side, but I started in nuclear OT and then rolled through IT and into cyber, and I've been doing cyber since 2012, and I'm now the CISO at Tennessee Valley.
Yeah, for about a year now, right?
Huh?
For about a year now?
Yeah.
Nice. So I was talking, but obviously with Roy, and I was trying to figure out like where do you, and in my previous life, a former life of myself, where did this conversation start? Like where are you getting pressure to talk about how we're going to go further into the engineering of the OT environment? Is it coming from business? Is it really a cyber conversation? Is there a cost component? Like, are you getting certain drivers that are allowing you to build a case for more and more IT into OT?
I think there's a lot of drivers where it came from different places over the years, and I think of myself personally. I go back to way back in 2004. Our chief nuclear officer walked in and said, "Hey, all you OT folks, you're IT." We're like, "What? I ain't no IT. I'm a nuke guy." And so we really wanted to figure out, like, what does this look like? What does it mean? But we didn't do it with the transmission side, just with the nuclear teams. But because of compliance, going and implementing some of the requirements later on NEIO 809 and milestones 1 through 7 to get to cyber, you started to really have this overlap of, design engineers designing network. You've got cyber IT folks trying to help and support. They don't always understand. So I'll give you a picture. We talked about convergence. I have a personal view on it. We talked earlier about like governance. I think governance can be one umbrella. They are two individuals standing under it, and you can't push them together. You have an IT skill set, which has a different priority, a different base knowledge, and an OT skill set, different priority, different base knowledge. Yet, those two individuals can train each other, they can share, but they really could and probably should live under one umbrella, because you can get efficiencies around software, licensing, standardization, knowledge transfer, training, moving people from OT to IT teams and back. So you can build more depth, but day to day, I think they're really separate.
So, I'm with you, but where would the convergence need to take place? If you just found a way to optimize the current demarcation, which exists in two worlds, and just collaborate, why do you need to offload accountability for a network layer or an application suite or certain business outcomes? I feel like maybe we don't need to converge too much. We just need to optimize the current model.
I think convergence comes in mission,
Okay.
right? Ultimately, being resilient, being secure,
Yeah.
being able to recover and respond to something, no matter where it's at in your environment. That's the convergence, is getting both of those teams to work together instead of thinking of their vertical and how do I do this and how do you do that.
Got it. So like clarity of purpose, and obviously it should probably be a business purpose first before it becomes a cyber risk purpose, and then working backwards from there. How do you build a governance model? How do you manage technology? How do you put a digital transformation or grid modernization roadmap in place? And yeah, I mean, that's probably, most of us talk about the business case for cyber. That probably is the best way to do it, is just mission and purpose first, work backwards, and then you can naturally figure out where does that
I think there's,
demarcation lie.
there's ability to gain efficiencies
Yeah.
in the two, and I think there needs to be crossover. Like, if I have business cyber folks, and that's all their focus is, then I'm never going to have the right focus. I have to have OT-focused embedded teams that sit with the OT team and says, yes, you do your job, I am here to do mine. My focus is this, yours is that, but we are on the same mission, right?
Yeah.
So keeping that division, but yet also learning from each other and building the conversation and opening the door to, hey, what can I learn from you and what can you teach me, both ways, I think just accelerates the capability and actually builds convergence kind of organically.
Have you, I wonder in power, I mean, I had a little bit of bulk power in Shell from a asset profile perspective, but I wonder is regulatory, do they set the kind of convergence drivers for you? Like if we say this is what's required to meet these regulations in the power industry, you kind of don't have a lot of flexibility to change governance models or adapt different, I mean, it feels like that might be not a barrier, but it also could be an easier defining roadmap for you.
If your primary focus is compliance,
Yeah,
I
well,
agree.
mean, sure, I get
But
it.
if you care about security,
But can you?
then you can operate within it.
Can you take certain things in different network layers and move them around and have different governance models when the regulation requires certain? I mean, how much flexibility do you have?
I want to throw one your way here for a second.
Sure.
So you talk about, we've talked a lot about.
If you say AI, I'm going to be really upset.
Hey, well, I want to, because by the way, I do wear the chief AI hat too. But
Nice.
no, in terms of, we've talked a lot about historical stuff.
Yeah.
But if you truly start to go, how do we design in security?
Yeah.
How do we build an environment where zero trust is the norm, the limited access is the norm, the device can be secured? What does the future look like?
I can't remember if it was Dale or somebody at this conference we were talking about. I thought there was so many really smart people working on the brownfield problem. How do we kind of figure out what we have in our real estate, but not fixing the future state problem? How do you design security into the future state? And that could be maybe where we marshal this cybersecurity OT, IT competency and say the next gen of capital projects, of grid, the modern grid, let's go flat, let's go software, let's go AI enabled, let's build it in from day one, and then that whole conversation about convergence really goes away.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll still have the brownfield issues, but over time they will resolve themselves.
I mean, there's two things that have to happen, right? There's this idea that we've got to fix, which I call theoretical risk. Yes, you can potentially do that, but it's so unlikely and it's 5 layers deep that it's not a real risk. And then the other thing we're really bad at, corporate, OT, cyber, it doesn't matter, is, there's a chance that could happen. So let's add another control and take no credit for the 5 I've got. Right, so we've really got to get real with how do we understand that risk and measure it, and then really integrate it into how do we train people and get real with that risk, right? So I think that's something that I've always been struggling with. And where does cyber risk start, and where does cyber risk end? If you have a risk for a plant outage, but the trigger is a fire, or if it's a cyber event, where does the cyber risk in that end? Is it all the way at the end of that risk where you're taking all the costs for that outage? Or is it really just the trigger and that's a plant risk and we already know it as a business? Why do we worry more? Because we said cyber.
Yeah, I still in my mind keep going back to this. We're cyber practitioners, so we think in cyber, but the convergence business case is not cyber. We're just riding along for the journey and hoping to be a part of, business value of some sort, whether it's cost or revenue. And I'm hoping that maybe we can instead of a conversation about how do we manage risk in these converged environments, how do we enable business or unlock business value as a starting point of the conversation. But if you go back to AI, and I can't believe I'm the one that's brought that up in this whole panel, what does that look like in a world where this whole concept of compute at the edge is actually real? You've managed all the unit economic issues and the governance issues, and we can go from the moon to instrumentation in a relatively safe and secure fashion. Does that change the whole paradigm of, well, one, it'll change IT/OT conversations, but will it change cyber risk?
Yeah, it will.
That's converged.
It's a tool, right? It's going to accelerate opportunities from an operational side.
Yeah.
It's going to eventually help with defense, but this is my analogy today. AI in software world and in cyber is a drone swarm. You can do some really cool looking things, you can do some really nasty things, but you can't do a lot of really productive things, and you can't really defend against it, right? And that's kind of where AI is to me right now. Like it's got these really cool creative features, it's got some really cool idea behind it, but I have a little feeling it's a little bit of blockchain right now. Like who talks about that anymore? You know, like everything was blockchain, and now it's like, yeah, that's nice. We can change stuff up and have a ledger.
But if you have a concept of self-healing, so a self-identified autonomous diagnosis of disruption at the instrumentation layer on the control bus, I mean that's LLMs are one thing, but that's a kind of an interesting new dynamic. It takes the human element out of it without obviously tuning. I think that might be something we should all work on to figure out how to have self-healing endpoints.
But again, what is the primary objective? Resilience.
Process, yeah.
Right? Being able to do what you're there to do, be available, and recover if something bad happens. So no matter what you use as the tool to get there, that stays the focus, then you're going to be able to operate. I saw a guy's t-shirt, I loved it. We live in an OT world.
What's that?
It's an OT world and we live in it, I thought that was good.
I'm Susan Peterson. I'm a Senior Director of Operational Technology Security at Wabtec, which is a rail company that serves both freight and transit customers.
I'm going to jump right back into the big idea of, I understand you're in rail now, but what's the future look like in OT to you? And what are you doing, to kind of prepare and change how you look at it?
So I think we have a trauma response in OT security, and it's called bolt-on, right? And way back in the day, 15 years ago, right, everything was legacy, nothing was secure by design, and so we had to do our best putting, passive monitoring on. Andrew Rogers gave a great talk yesterday, talking about secure by demand and those assumptions. I can't change anything, can't impact software, can't create friction for our operators. That's our mindset. 15 years have passed. All right, there's a lot that we can build in. And on the IT side, right, you see that. You see security stakeholders getting a seat at the table for IT technologies and saying, if you could give me these logs, if you could do these things, it would have a really positive impact. It'd be less fragile connections I'd have to maintain. And I don't know why we're not having those discussions.
I know that we've looked at various potential ways to get there. One is CCIE or CIE. What's your thoughts on kind of really going there as a basis for IT? And then, kind of combine into that what convergence looks like in that.
Yeah. I really think it's about us owning a seat at the table strategically, right? I just think too often we're passing off a set of requirements and we hope they're going to get into a spec. And in some companies, both in automation and as an operator, I've seen good functional testing of security systems. But I think our challenge here is to get in much earlier into the strategic discussions our companies are having. So I feel like we get surprised when our customers when operators, our stakeholders rather, on the IT side of the business side will say, well, we're going to embrace connected worker, or, we've got this major initiative, oh, by the way, the mechanical team needs software asset inventory too. We don't understand those user stories of our stakeholders to know, like, I could piggyback on that investment. That'd be pretty good. Even things like resources being deployed on legacy assets that are close to end of life. We could influence that decision. So I think it's getting visibility to the more strategic level and really understanding like the user stories of the folks in the field, the compliance folks, the procurement folks, and how we provide value to them and what we can anticipate. In the talk that on cyber-informed engineering, the gentleman who gave that talk really said, expect everything's going to be connected. You've got known unknowns, so how do you build a system around that?
Yeah, I think that concept of consequence and focused on impact is a good way to be real. It's kind of that thing I mentioned last time, the shift from theoretical to real risk, and understanding like what is the impact and how do we prioritize what we do there. I think there's a challenge yet. Like I'll use an example. My previous role, I was electric sector, but I worked a lot with a gentleman that was transportation. And we would talk a lot about protecting OT and then how do you recover from impacts? Because like his OT was scattered over a large land area and available often to public access.
Yep.
So how does that work for you guys and how do you like operate with that?
Yeah, I think understanding those use cases and really addressing what you can do. I loved what Dale brought up. I think standards are great to set a foundation, but if it's just impossible with benchmark that you can't achieve, I think we need to have more risk-based discussions. So if you can't do anything around remote access or in-person access, if an asset is in the field, right? Okay, then what do you do to support resilience around that, right? What do you do to know the state of that control system and what it should be later on, and just really explicitly knowing those use cases around it. I think that's the best we can do to make informed decisions. I'm a huge, in the bookstore, there's a book called How to Measure Anything in Cybersecurity Risk. Huge fan of Richard Searson and Doug Hubbard, just to give you a basis to be able to report up material security risk. We don't have perfect data to run that kind of stochastic model, but we can come up with 10th percentile and 90th percentile of impact. Yeah. And at least gives us a t-shirt size of where we got to focus our time. It's super defensible with business folks. Yeah. And supports SEC reporting.
Not everybody might agree with this idea, but if you have a cyber risk policy or an insurance policy, you've kind of been given a tolerance of a number. Yeah. And then if you look at the next 5 years, you can go, oh, I think there might be really a 5% chance something could happen in one of those 5 years. And there you go, multiply your number, and if you're spending more than that capital, you're probably overspending the risk, right? And so you can start to kind of balance your priority of like, how much cyber do I really need? Because a lot of times we just always think we need more. Yeah. And I think that's a challenge to balance with skill sets. I'd rather take some of that money and not put it toward products and get it back to what we saw earlier that always gets cut back. I want to build the people. I want to give them the training. I want to make sure that we have what we need in depth and capability, because that's really what's going to get it done. I don't care what tool you deploy, what AI does, it's still going to need people, and you're going to need good ones.
I think that's really interesting, and I'm really passionate about a topic of, Eric Forner gave a talk about, IT versus, kind of custom OT, and he made the point, how many of us in the audience, by the way, have seen highly decorative firewalls that have not been tuned or updated, right? They're decorative in nature. The investment has been made. Okay, but the problem is not that Bob, who's working as a plant operator, who is looking at that as a task, as other duties as assigned, right? We don't think about what we can do to reduce that labor. And what we found is companies, according to like Boston Consulting Group on the IT side, companies that do that can save up to 40% in their security labor, right? Where they've thought about de-risking that up front, either reducing the task or having ways to automate or just reducing that control overall. And I think that we really need to, in our ROI, start thinking about how we reduce the maintenance. Yeah. None of the organizations in critical infrastructure have staffing in the field to do that maintenance.
Right. I think decisions got to be focused on that outcome. Like, what does it really do, and what's its priority to do it? Because, you know, I've seen a lot of cases, and I say it this way, like technology. We did technology for technology's sake, but it changed nothing. Like, I remember this one time we were going to automate, you know, this form that they had in nuclear, had like 5 different groups, you know, sign off on it with, you know, these checks and these. The best answer was the piece of paper. I'm sorry, there was no better, because you know, if somebody's not there at the right time online and they click the button, now the time is really wrong to what they actually did, and like that was the best answer. And so like with technology, sometimes I feel like, you know, like AMI and so there's some great benefits, but you just took a component that was a 20, 30-year component to a 5-year, maybe 10.
Yeah.
And now you have extra costs, you have extra maintenance, you have extra patching and vulnerability. Like sometimes we use technology in a way like we've got to get real about what the service and the op is.
Yeah, so I'm interested, you know, in nuclear and other kind of very safety critical types of industries, the level of testing that's required, right, before you can put something into operation is really intense.
It's painful.
Right, and so this kind of view about automated device management, there's some really interesting players getting into that space. How do you see those kind of safety critical components of operations or subsectors of industry really being able to be dynamic enough to adjust to threats in the same way that IT is?
I think vendors at that point have to start to step up and design in the protection and the visibility and the things that you need to be resilient and be able to operate with that safety equipment, you know, and making sure that we have the right level of capability. Like if I'm defending my house and I'm worried about the bad guy getting to that closet, yeah, I need to be able to see him enter the front door at a minimum, or a window. But ultimately, I want to move that out. I want to see him before he's on my lawn or before he enters the neighborhood, or heck, even my town, right? Like that's the visibility we need, because now I have more time, more ways to stop them before they get to that critical thing. And I think that's something we got to have all those people thinking about, whether it's IT or OT, they've got to be focused on how do I help influence and protect security.
So the call to action is talk to your automation OEMs, let them know that what you want so it can be built in, less systems to deal with, less bolt-on.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we've got Andy Kraft here today, who I'll let you do an introduction, but I'm psyched because you're part of the water sector, so I have lots of questions I want to ask.
Awesome. So I'm Andy Kraft. I'm the Director of Operations Technology.
Okay. Okay.
Me? Oh, I guess I'm having microphone issues here.
That's all right. We're going to make you sing in a minute. So, you know, water is a really challenging sector to secure. Really challenges on resources, budgeting. You have to go through government processes to do that. So it's, you know, harder. It just takes longer. Tell me about how you've used culture to shift things left in your organization.
I appreciate that. So culture is one of those things that we've grown kind of as the organization has evolved. So when I started, I was the OT guy. It was before anything was even called OT. So there was the IT team. It was fairly small. We were a relatively smaller distribution collection only organization. They were off doing their thing. So when we introduced the OT networks, they wanted nothing to do with it. It was me, and it was very, very minor. And as we grew the organization, the two teams kind of stayed apart. They did their thing, I did my thing. But we had a couple of really large projects, and we had a new director of our IT group that came on board that I actually developed a really great relationship with. And we kind of came to the realization that we have common things that we want to accomplish when it came to security and supporting the business, but we also had a recognition that mission is different, right? What IT does and what OT does are fundamentally on a mission level drastically different, but we still support the organization as a whole. So that really became the foundation of what has become our cyber culture. And it's one of those things that we have a tremendously great working relationship between the two teams. And that has enabled us to be elastic and really respond to the changes as the county has grown, as our company has grown and to support the facilities that we have.
That's really cool. And a lot of times it comes down to those personal relationships that you invest in. From a technology roadmap, do you come together and say, okay, I think we could, share or come up with a common business case around this kind of technology, and like what's been successful for you and, when you're engaging with other teams?
We have done some really good things when it comes to supporting the mission. There are things that we do that IT does not. There are things that IT does that OT does not. But in the same way, we also have some commonly managed assets. So some of the boundary devices and things that we work with, we co-manage those things. Our communications infrastructure to our remote facilities, we co-manage those things because they have expertise that I leverage, and they also leverage the fact that my staff supports and does trouble calls, if you will, work orders to those assets, so they don't necessarily have to be the first responders. So it's very much a complementary relationship that we've developed over the years.
You said the R word, remote.
Remote, yes.
Yeah, so that's a reality in water, right? With so many facilities, and that's always for operators really top on the list, especially if it's OEMs going in.
Yep.
What's your strategy been around that with IT? Have there been any kind of common controls or processes or even training you've been able to leverage?
So our remote facilities are managed by the OT team.
Okay.
IT, short of some of that common infrastructure that we both maintain and support, our IT folks really don't have anything to do with our remote facilities much at all. It's really on my team. So I have folks that can do infrastructure, that can do servers and workstations and switches. So we focus on that, and we let the IT team focus on the business. So again, we're probably a little bit different model than a lot of organizations, especially in water. Some can do that, some can't. It just depends on the size and the resources they have available.
What do you see? Talent is a challenge too. You talked about leaning into culture. It can be very hard to get the salaries within regulated entities that you need to attract folks. I think we're really mission driven as a service oriented and mission driven as a community, but we all got to pay our mortgages and stuff. So how have you managed that, or growing talent within your organization, with kind of those types of constraints in the marketplace?
Resourcing is tough. A lot of water utilities, for the folks that aren't in the water industry, there's 150, 160,000 water utilities across the nation, varying size and complexity. Some have a large staff. Some have maybe one IT person for the entire organization. Sometimes they don't have any and they just contract it out. So for us, it was Andy for 15 years before I actually started really bringing on staff to help support some of the things that I do. But we've been really picky about who we hire and why we hire. They've got to fit our culture. I like people that I can train. They don't have to know everything out of the box. If they do, it's great. But I have yet to find that person. But I want somebody who has good base knowledge and that is excited to get out of bed every day and come learn. I am a firm believer in curse of the competent. If you can do it, I will let you do it, with some governance, of course, some oversight. But certainly, I want people that are passionate about what they do, and I'm willing to wait until I find that person.
Yeah, can burn a lot of bridges.
It took me a year to find my last PLC programmer. So I'm very picky.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's paid off for sure. Tell me a little bit about the kind of compliance frameworks, or how you deal with that part of the role. any hacks you have in minimizing effort or labor there, or
So in the water industry, we are required to certify every 5 years. The America's Water Infrastructure Act, Congress passed in 2018. We have to go back and recertify every 5 years. We are just finishing that process right now. We got to choose our adventure, if you will, when it came to it. So we got to pick our own adventure. So we decided we were going to use NIST 2.0, right? We wanted to use the latest thing that came out of NIST. And we put an RFP out that said we want a consultant that's going to do certain things, and it was on the street. And we were of the mindset, we were not afraid to kind of open up and say, tell us what we're doing wrong, because, we do a lot of things right, but we're not perfect, and we will never be perfect. And I think I heard it said earlier that, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Whoever said it, I'm 1,000% on board. Thank you very much. It is a never-ending journey, so we want to find a consultant that will tell us what we're doing. We want findings.
yeah.
If a consultant comes in and tells me you're all good, they're a lousy consultant, I'm sorry to say. So we go through that process. We want to make sure we understand what's going on, and hopefully we get a good result, and then we can take action and actually make progress, and not just, as Dale said, stick it on a shelf someplace and wait for the next go-round.
Yeah, that's great context.
And I think we're done.
Yeah.
All right.
Coming back on the stage, there's way less people here than there was when I started.
I get the dubious honor of trying to figure out what to ask Marty in his vast experience about IT/OT convergence. So I struggled with this a little bit, but I want to leverage and maybe bring us back a little bit. And I missed the first couple of minutes of the conversation, so hopefully I'm not covering old ground here.
No worries.
So why are we still talking about IT/OT convergence? Why is this still a thing?
I don't know. I'm personally not a fan of the word, because I think that it means different things to different people. And we've heard multiple sort of conversations today about, well, it's not really convergence, it's sort of strategic integration, right? There's these collaboration points where the technology touches, or the people touch, or the governance overlays or overlaps. So I understand why some people have such a powerful, visceral reaction to convergence. And I don't think convergence by itself was ever a goal or objective. I don't know, some marketing department coined the word, and the industry kind of ran with it. But, the bottom line is that all of this technology, all of the people, and we've heard this multiple times today too, is that, hey, you're working for the same company. You have the same mission and objective, right? Your mission is to provide people with clean, safe, reliable water, right? Doesn't matter if you're the IT person or the OT person or the person who's changing filters or something like that, right? Everybody knows what that mission is, and subordinately, everybody should be lined up behind that mission or vision. I think the convergence term kind of confuses things a little.
You brought up one thing, and I tend to be a little bit of a contrarian when it comes to this.
That's awesome.
So bear with me. We look at things as the mission of IT and the mission of OT are different. IT manages the business, manages the people, manages the payroll, all the HR things that go along with it. OT is why the business exists. Without OT, that business dies. So we always talk about IT/OT convergence with IT being in the fore.
So you say we should change it up and
say
OT, IT?
It should be, OT is the core of the business. It is the core business function. Shouldn't the conversation change to where the emphasis is on the O and not the I?
Yeah, I don't dispute your statement at all, right? I mean, the reason that OT exists in the first place is to keep the business running. And if you go back, I have some gray hair. we have some gray hair. If you go back to some of the first plants that I did modernization projects in, the control system was pneumatic or single loop electronic. There wasn't a friggin' computer anywhere, right? The first networks in a lot of manufacturing facilities were put there by the control system people. There were two groups. There was the control system people that were running proprietary blue hose and communications networks everywhere. And then there were usually the financial and warehousing people that had a big blue mainframe or mini computer sitting in the corner that did inventory control. It cut payroll, it was sales orders and that kind of stuff. So the whole information technology domain didn't really exist. The OT sort of cyber domain didn't really exist, and they kind of developed. It'd be really fun to have a Wayback Machine and go back 40 years or something and basically squash those disciplines together back then. And I think it was Tyler that was talking about, there's a different approach if you're doing a brownfield sort of retrofit, or whether you're building a brand new greenfield facility where it's just starting on paper. You can do radically different things in those two scenarios.
I have experienced both. I used to be an OEM many years ago in material handling. So I know where you're coming from when it comes to a lot of that stuff. I've got VAX terminals in my head from way back when.
I'm a VAX VMS guy, right?
So it's just, to me, the whole IT/OT convergence, I hate the word convergence, much like most other people that have talked today. And I think of it more in terms of coherence, right?
Yeah.
The idea of you've got two strains, two missions, but ultimate goal is the support of the business. So as a community, whether it's water or power or oil and gas or anything else, how do we get folks to start thinking of it in that terms and getting away from the whole idea of this? We still hear the IT versus OT, or IT is so far embedded into what has become the OT environment for folks that are just starting their journey. How do we work to break that out?
Education. It's all about education. More sessions like this, more sort of open discussion. I think eventually you'll see more of the standards mature to have kind of recommended architectures and things like that, where let's intentionally collaborate, right? And I think for the most part, the sort of fiefdom mentality of OT and IT are totally separate. They'll never touch. They're never the same people. We're not ever going to have a coffee or a beer with that individual. I think those days are pretty much over. Everybody's trying to understand, what are the problems that the IT department deals with? Oh, what are the problems that the OT and control system departments deal with? Are there any common solutions? So I think in the long run, this will just kind of atrophy on its own.
Do you see this kind of concept? We're not to the atrophy point yet, unfortunately.
No.
But if you're a small utility that's just starting out, the water sector is full of them, and they are inundated with this thought process of IT/OT convergence when they barely have an IT department, right?
Then they don't have an OT department,
right?
Or
Their
control system department.
Their IT person could be the mayor, could be the dog catcher, could be the fleet mechanic, just as much as anything else. When they're wearing it as a other duty as required kind of thing, to reach those folks and get them to start even thinking about it. It's that educational component. Do you, in your current capacity as you think about things, how do you find and reach those folks and break through?
There seems to be, some of it is sector specific based on sort of the criticality of the product or service delivered on how well staffed they are. So there's no real hard gray line, right? It's kind of blurry. A lot of smaller organizations that don't have their own staff natively, they bring in integrators and consultants and outside people. So you call your vendor to come in and fix anything if it needs fixing. And it's not much different on the IT side. They call in their IT experts, that come in for a day a month and do some cleanup, and they don't really have anybody on staff full time. So there are a different set of challenges, I think, for those style of organizations vis-a-vis, Tyler talking about Shell, that globally has, more OT cybersecurity people than, most of your water companies probably have in tech people in total. So it is a different set of problems. I still think that from a leadership level, and one of the things I'm really happy about in this space is that we're finally have a seat at the table at the board. So at the board level, the CISO is being asked to report out. Quite often they're getting tasked with reporting out the security of OT environments that they maybe not have direct control over, but an ancillary role of theirs is that they have to understand the security paradigm of that and roll that up into their reporting. So they might not be the ones that are directly making changes in the environment, but they're the single point of evaluation for risk for the company. So that in itself is a type of convergence, but it's more about collaboration, really.
And I could go on for like hours.
Oh, we could sit here for till we had beer on the table, but.
Any last words as we wrap up the long conversation?
I don't think so. So thank you for sticking around this long. And if any of you have any thoughts on this format, this was a brand new experiment that Dale and I kind of brewed up. And I think overall it was pretty successful. So if you've got some critique or you've got some suggestions, grab me in the hallway or send me an email or ping me on Whova or LinkedIn or something. But I think we'll try this again in a little bit different sort of structure. But I think we'll try it again. So thanks, Andy.
Thank you.